When your world crumbles, it doesn't start with an explosion. It's the little things, the quiet clues, that break you. That night, I waited for Samantha to come home. Midnight ticked past, and my patience was wearing thin. She'd gone out with her friends, said she needed a break, but when the door creaked open and I saw her, my stomach dropped. Her hair was a mess, like she'd been through a storm. Her clothes, torn at the edges, hung loosely. And there was something else, something I couldn't ignore. The faint, unmistakable wetness on her thighs. I froze. The air around her reeked of cologne. Not hers, not mine, someone else's. A stranger's. I helped her to bed after cleaning her up. "What happened, Sam?" I asked, trying to sound calm, trying to believe there was an explanation. But her eyes, glassy and unfocused, wouldn't meet mine. She mumbled through the haze of alcohol, words that made my chest tighten. It didn't mean anything just once. "I'm sorry." Her words hit me harder than anything I'd ever felt. Sorry? For what? I wanted to yell, to demand answers, but I couldn't. Not then. Not while she was like that. I swallowed the lump in my throat, tucked her in, and walked out of the room. My heart told me to hope, but my gut whispered the truth. Something had happened. Something I wasn't sure I could forgive. The next morning, when the alcohol wore off, I was going to get my answers. And I had a feeling I wasn't ready for what I'd hear. The morning after is when reality sets in. Samantha woke up groaning, clutching her head like it might split in two. I heard her shuffling around the room, probably piecing together fragments of the night before. Meanwhile, I was already in the kitchen, sitting in silence, staring at the evidence I couldn't ignore. I'd been up for hours. Sleep wasn't an option. My mind wouldn't stop replaying her slurred words, the smell of cologne, and the things I'd seen. I needed answers, but more than that, I needed the truth. She walked in, still in her wrinkled clothes from the night before, her eyes red and tired. She looked at me, confused, until she saw the photos on the table. There they were, right in front of me, undeniable proof. A close-up of the stains on her dress, and a faint but visible handprint near her waistline. I had taken those photos last night. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I just needed to document what I couldn't yet process. "Do you even remember what you did last night?" I asked her, my voice trembling, not from anger, but from the ache in my chest. Her face fell, and I saw it, the panic, the guilt, and the realization. She didn't need to ask what I was talking about. She already knew. Samantha broke down right there in the kitchen, her shoulders shaking as tears streamed down her face. "I'm sorry," she choked out. "I didn't mean for it to happen. It was a mistake." Her words cut through me, sharp and cold. "A mistake?" I said, cutting her off. "You didn't just trip and fall into this. You chose it. You walked into that bar, got drunk, and let another man put his meat inside of you." She tried to explain, tried to justify it with her drunken state, but I wasn't having it. Her tears didn't move me anymore. They felt hollow, just like the excuses she was making. At that moment, I realized something. She wasn't just apologizing to me. She was trying to make herself feel better. And that was the part that hurt the most. She didn't fully understand what she had done to us, to our marriage. I couldn't listen anymore. I stood up, looked her in the eyes, and said, "I need some air." Then I walked out, leaving her alone with the wreckage she'd created. You can't just let something like this go. Not when your trust has been shattered, not when every fiber of your being is screaming for the truth. I tried, God knows I tried, to put it out of my mind, but the questions kept eating at me. Who was he? Why her? And most of all, how long had this been going on? I started with what Samantha had told me. Her drunken confession was vague and scattered, but there were enough breadcrumbs to follow. A name, Adam. That was all I needed to start digging. It didn't take long to find him. Social media makes it easy to connect the dots when you're motivated. Adam was exactly the kind of guy you'd expect. Clean-cut, successful, the type who knew how to charm his way into anything. But what caught my attention was something much worse. Samantha followed him. and he followed her back. This wasn't random. It wasn't some faceless stranger. They knew each other. Another detail I didn't expect is that Adam was married. He wasn't just married. He had kids, a perfect little family plastered all over his Instagram. Photos of them on vacation, celebrating birthdays, even cozy Sunday mornings at home. He looked like the kind of man who had it all. But then again, so did I. And look where that got me. The more I looked, the more things started to click. I needed to know how deep this went. Samantha's phone became my next target. She didn't know I was watching, but I had to know everything. Late at night, while she slept, I unlocked it. That's when I saw the messages. Short, casual, but damning. Adam knew she'd be at the bar that night. They talked about it. A few light exchanges, just enough to set the stage. He showed up because he knew she'd be there. It wasn't random, it was an arrangement. My body was shaking as I read their conversation. It wasn't long, but it didn't need to be. There it was, plain as day. Proof that this wasn't just a drunken mistake. It was planned, maybe not in so many words, but enough to know they both knew what they were doing. That night I made a decision. I was going to make sure his wife knew the truth. She deserved to know what kind of man she was married to. And when I was done with him, I turned my focus back to my wife. The divorce papers were already being prepared. I just needed closure before I walked away. I had the name, I had the evidence, and now I had a plan. It wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. If my marriage was falling apart, so was his. I debated whether I should tell his wife, Charlotte. Some might say it wasn't my place, but I disagreed. She deserved the truth just like I did. So, I reached out. It wasn't easy. I worded my message carefully, explaining that I needed to talk to her about something important. She replied the same day. We agreed to meet at a quiet cafe downtown Neutral Ground, where emotions wouldn't boil over. Charlotte was waiting for me at a small coffee shop. She was dressed simply, her dark hair pulled into a neat ponytail. She looked confused, maybe a little nervous, but she smiled politely as I introduced myself. I could see the love in her eyes when she mentioned Adam. That made it harder. I didn't sugarcoat it. I told her why I was there. Your husband had an affair with my wife. Her smile vanished, replaced by shock. Her hand trembled as she set down her coffee cup. For a moment, she didn't say anything, just stared at me like she couldn't believe the words coming out of my mouth. I reached into my bag and pulled out the photos, evidence of what I'd found. A screenshot of the chat, the time-stamped images from that night, and a secret recording of my wife's confession, mentioning his name, giving her time to process each piece. Her face went pale as she picked up the photos and listened to the recording of my wife's, mentioning Adam's name. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she didn't cry, not yet. She just stared at them, her lips trembling. She finally spoke, her voice shaky but firm. Thank you for telling me. I nodded and stood to leave. There wasn't anything else to say. As I walked out of that coffee shop, I felt a strange mix of emotions, anger, relief, even guilt. What Adam and Charlotte did next wasn't my concern anymore. My focus was on taking back control of my life, and that meant letting go of Samantha and everything we used to be. After that night, the house felt different. Samantha wasn't the same either. I could see it in her eyes, the way guilt weighed her down. She tried everything to fix what she'd broken. First, it was the tears. She cried every day, begging me to talk, to let her explain, to give her another chance. She told me she'd do anything, counseling, therapy, anything I needed. But every time I looked at her, I saw the shadow of what she did. She started leaving me notes, little scraps of paper tucked into my jacket pockets or left on my pillow. I love you. I'll never hurt you again. Please don't give up on us. At first I read them, then I stopped. She even made dinner every night, my favorite meal. I couldn't sit at the same table with her, pretending like everything was fine. It wasn't. Part of me wanted to believe her. I wanted to forgive her. For years, we'd built a life together, a life I thought was solid. But now, I couldn't unsee what I saw, or undo the knot in my stomach every time I thought about her with someone else. She didn't just cheat on me. She shattered the trust I'd placed in her, the respect we'd built. One evening, she cornered me in the living room. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her voice hoarse. "Please, Brad," she whispered. "I love you. I'll do anything to fix this." I finally looked at her and I said, "I don't think so." My words hit her like a slap. She sank to the floor, sobbing, clutching at her chest like it physically hurt. And maybe it did. Maybe she felt even a fraction of the pain she'd put me through. For days, Samantha and I lived in a house that felt more like a battlefield after the war. No shouting, no screaming, just the unbearable weight of what she'd done hanging in the air. I had hoped, even just a little, that the quiet might bring clarity, that maybe we could fix what was broken. But deep down, I already knew the truth. Some things can't be repaired. I'd spent those days tying up loose ends, sorting out bank accounts, reviewing documents, preparing for the inevitable. I thought about every moment we'd shared, the good and the bad, and wondered if it was enough to stay. That morning, I walked into the living room where Samantha sat, staring at the floor like it might give her answers. She looked up when she heard me, her eyes swollen from days of crying, her face pale and desperate. I held the papers in my hand, and for a moment I hesitated, not because I doubted my decision, but because I knew this was the moment everything would truly end. "You made your choice that night," I said, my voice calm but firm. "This is mine." I placed the papers on the table in front of her. The words hit her like a slap. I could see it, the way her whole body tensed, the way her lips trembled as she reached for them. "Brad, no, please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "We can fix this. I'll do anything." She fell to her knees, clutching at my hand, sobbing so hard I thought she might choke on her own breath. "Don't do this," she begged. "Please, don't throw us away." But the truth is, she had already thrown it away. That night, in a moment of selfishness, she had destroyed the trust we'd built. And without trust, what were we? I pulled my hand away gently, but firmly. "I can't," I said, shaking my head. "I've tried, Sam. I've thought about it every way I could. But I can't look at you the same. I can't look at us the same." My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The words were final. As I walked out of the room, leaving her sobbing on the floor, I felt a strange mix of emotions. There was sadness, of course, but also relief. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe again. It wasn't the ending I wanted, but it was the one I needed. Some choices leave scars too deep to heal. And hers did. It's strange how the end of something that once meant everything can feel so hollow. But that's how it was. Hollow. I walked out of that marriage a free man, but freedom didn't feel like I thought it would. For weeks, I couldn't bring myself to touch the bed. I slept on the couch because the bedroom smelled too much like her, like memories I didn't want to relive. But slowly things started to change. I stopped looking at the empty spaces she used to fill and started seeing the possibilities instead. I bought new furniture, rearranged the living room, and even painted the walls a different color. It was my way of saying, "This is mine now." I wasn't rebuilding a house. I was rebuilding me. The cracks she left, the scars, they didn't go away, but they started to hurt less. And in their place, I found something I hadn't felt in years: peace. Samantha, I don't know what became of her after that. We stopped talking after the papers were signed. But I heard things. She tried to move on, but it wasn't easy. Some people say time heals all wounds, but I don't think that's true. Time doesn't heal. It just gives you a chance to grow around the pain, to learn how to carry it. For me, that meant learning to be okay with being alone. I'd rather spend my days in quiet peace than in a marriage that reminds me of betrayal. And as for Samantha, I hope she finds a way to live with what she did. Not for me, but for herself. In the end, we both lost something. I lost a wife I thought I knew, and she lost everything she once had. But the difference is, I found something better. I found myself. And that was worth every painful step.